Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 5, entitled Narada Muni Cursed by Prajapati Daksha, text number 44. Sri Shuku Vacha Pratijagrahatad Badam Narada Sadhu Samata Etavan Sadhu Vadohi Titikshete Swayam Sri Shuku Vacha Pratijagrahatabadam Narada Sadhu Samata Etavan Sadhu Vadohi Titikshete Swayam Sri Shuku Vacha Pratijagrahatabadam Narada Sadhu Samata Etavan Sadhu Vadohi Titikshete Swayam. Please repeat. Sri Shuku Vacha Pratijagrahatabadam Narada Sadhu Samata
Etavan Sadhu Vadohi
Vadohi Titikshete Swayam.
Sri Shuku Vacha
Sri Shuku Vacha Pratijagrahatabadam Narada Sadhu Samata
Etavan Sadhu Vadohi
Etavan Sadhu Vadohi
Titikshete Swayam
Titikshete Swayam. Sri Shuku Vacha. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Pratijagraha, except taught that Bottom, so be it. Narada Muni, Sadhu Samata, who is an approved sadhu, Etavan, this much, Sadhu Vada, appropriate for a saintly person. He, indeed, Titiksheta, he may tolerate. Ishvara, although able to curse Prajapati Daksha. Swayam, himself. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, my dear king, since Narada Muni is an approved saintly person, when cursed by Prajapati Daksha, he replied, Tad Badam, Yes, what you have said is good. I accept this curse. He could have cursed Prajapati Daksha in return, but because he is a tolerant and merciful sadhu, he took no action. Purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Tikshava Karunika Surta Sarvadehinam Ajata Sadhrava Shanta Sadhava Sadhubhushana. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. Because Narada Muni is the most elevated of sadhus, devotees, to deliver Prajapati Daksha, he silently tolerated the first. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taught this principle to all his devotees. Trinadapi Sunichena Twarapi Sahushana Amanina Manadena Kirtanya Sadahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Following the orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one who preaches the glories of the Lord all over the world or all over the universe should be humbler than grass and more tolerant than a tree, because a preacher cannot live an easygoing life. Indeed, a preacher must face many impediments. Not only is he sometimes cursed, but sometimes he must also suffer personal injury. For example, when Nityananda Prabhu went to preach Krishna consciousness to the two roguish brothers, Jagai and Madai, they injured him and made his head bleed. But nevertheless, he tolerantly delivered the two rogues who became perfect Vaishnavas. This is the duty of a preacher. Lord Jesus Christ even tolerated crucifixion. Therefore, the curse against Narada was not very astonishing, and he tolerated it. Now it may be asked why Narada Muni stayed in the presence of Prajapati Daksha and tolerated all his accusations and curses. Was that for Daksha's deliverance? The answer is yes. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said that after being insulted by Prajapati Daksha, Narada Muni should have left immediately, but he purposely stayed to hear all Daksha's strong words, so that Daksha might be relieved of his anger. Prajapati Daksha was not an ordinary man. He had accumulated the results of many pious activities. Therefore, Narada Muni expected that after delivering his curse, Daksha, satisfied and freed from anger, would repent his misbehavior and thus get a chance to become a Vaishnava and be delivered. When Jagai and Madai offended Lord Nityananda stood tolerantly, and therefore both brothers fell at his lotus feet and repented. Consequently, they later became perfect Vaishnavas. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Narada Muni Cursed by Prajapati Daksha. Om Gyanataramanasya Gyananjanashvakaya Chokshmatara Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Sari Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are concluding with the discussion of our pastime of Narada Muni delivering the sons of Daksha. He had delivered both sets of sons from the materialistic lifestyle to where they were most properly situated in devotional service, which for them was the renounced order of life. And Prajapati Daksha cursed that Narada Muni not be able to stay in any one place, that he has to travel around the universe to not live anywhere. Uh, in in that, basically, since Narada Muni had in Daksha's view, stolen or induced his sons to give up the chance for having a griha, for having a house or residence or anything. He cursed that Narada Muni should not have that either. And as is pointed out in this verse, Narada Muni, because he is an Ishvara, he's one of the controllers, as the verse points out. He was perfectly able to himself curse Daksha, or he could even just nullify the curse. He could have said, "Yeah, I choose not to accept this curse," and it would have been, like it would have taken no effect. And we see, this point made several times throughout the Bhagavatam. The biggest example, or one big example, is with Maharaj Parikshit himself, the receiver of the Bhagavatam. The point was made that, as a very elevated devotee, after he was cursed by the Brahmana boy to die by the snake bird, he could have just nullified the curse, said, "No, I don't want to die in this way," and the snake bird would not have power to actually take his life. But he accepted the curse for the sake of service. Maharaj Parikshit's service was, of course, being the impetus for Srimad Bhagavatam to be spoken, and to be spoken as widely as it was. Of course, Srimad Bhagavatam is always there, but if you look at the transmission before that, from Brahma to Narada, Narada to Vyasadeva, even from Vyasadeva to Shukadev, it was usually only to one person. All right. Narada Muni spoke to Vyasadeva and said and gave him the instruction to write it down. Just I think on the bank of the Ganges. Vyasadeva spoke it to Shukadev Goswami when he was refusing to come out of the womb. But Shukadev Goswami spoke it to Maharaj Parikshit in an assembly of all of the important people, not just on the planet, but in the universe. Anybody who's anybody went to hear what instructions should be given to Maharaj Parikshit at the time of his death. And likewise, Narada Muni accepted Prajapati Daksha's curse because it is better for his service. If Narada Muni stayed in one place, how many people could he actually preach to? First, somebody would have to know about Narada Muni to go even look for him. and then have to know where to find his ashram, which, he is the Deva Rishi, the Rishi among the demigods. So it would probably be somewhere in the upper planetary systems, meaning that, all of us who are in the middle or the lower planetary systems would have a very difficult time getting there. And then, of course, one would have to be qualified to even enter it. But Narada Muni, going around everywhere, all over the universe, gives as many people as possible an opportunity to come into contact with his teachings and with devotional service. And we see in many cases that even people who would not be qualified to uh, necessarily seek out Narada Muni, or even have the desire to, would are benefited uh, by this process, this lifestyle of moving around everywhere. One of the examples of this is Nagari the hunter in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where he is a hunter that was half killing animals. Hunting itself is, of course, very against the Vaishnav way of life. That's why we have posted signs all along our property to stop trespassers and hunters from coming into the Dham. And especially the way that Mrigari was killing them was very cruel. He was kind of half killing them and waiting for them to die on their own. Uh, and then he met uh, Narada Muni and became a very elevated Vaishnava that uh, did not even want to kill an ant. Another very famous example is Valmiki, who was a thief uh, until he met Narada Muni. And after he met Narada Muni, he became elevated to such an extent that he could write probably the most famous rendition of the Ramayana, the pastimes of Lord Rama. So Narada Muni accepted this curse because it gave him the chance to preach devotional service everywhere, and even to the most fallen living entities. We have several examples that Prabhupada gives in the purports of other personalities that did the same. Nityananda Prabhu, of course, preached to all sorts of people, very famously Jagai and Madai, who were very roguish sorts of persons, where they were committing every type of sin. I've heard it described, I don't have the exact scriptural reference, that Chitragroup, the person who is writing down all of the sinful activities and the pious activities for Yamaraj to judge after one leaves this body, was actually having trouble keeping up with writing down all the sinful activities that they were performing. But still, Nityananda Prabhu went to deliver them. The example is also given of Jesus Christ, who, of course, very famously associated with the lower class members of societies. Uh, People like beggars and prostitutes. And if that wasn't bad enough, even tax collectors, uh, which at the culture of the time, you can hang out with prostitutes, but hanging out with a tax collector is a bit too far. Uh, and as the point is made in the purport as well, all of these personalities had to undergo so many insults, injuries, offenses against themselves for the preaching of devotional service. Nityananda Prabhu, of course, was physically attacked by Jagai and Madai to the point where his head started to bleed. Haridas Thakur, who wasn't mentioned in the purport, but is a good example of this, was ordered to be beaten in 22 different marketplaces. Jesus Christ was, of course, crucified, but all of these preachers of devotional service tolerated these insults against them. Haridas Thakur, when it became clear that those who were beating him were very agitated because they were getting afraid that the Muslim authorities at the time would punish them because Haridas Thakur wasn't dying. When they explained this to him, he said, I don't want to put you in distress. And he went into samadhi, which is, of course, externally seems like one has died. And then, they were pacified that, okay, we have killed Haridas Thakur. They threw him in the Ganges, and he just came out of samadhi and walked off to preach more. Nityananda Prabhu, of course, when Lord Chaitanya came to kill Jagai and Madai with the Sudarshan Chakra, he pleaded that this is not the purpose for which you have incarnated. So do not kill these two roguish brothers. Of course, Jesus, some of his last words were, "Forgive them, Father, for they do know not what they do." So in all these cases, we see that the preacher, as Prabhupada points out in the purport, should be tolerant and merciful and humble. In the verse from early in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Prabhupada quotes, it gives the qualities or symptoms of a sadhu as that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures, and all of his characteristics are sublime. And this is actually what attracts sincere people to the process of devotional service. The preachers of the Srimad Bhagavatam should not be just preaching some sort of Kaitava Dharma, cheating religion. Many of the expressions of religion, spirituality, etc., that one sees nowadays and throughout history at different times has this has some elements at least of Shaitava Dharma, of cheating in there that is manifest in different ways. Many people, of course, just see religion as something to do on a Sunday morning or Saturday morning or whenever people go to their places of worship. That it is about mm, all of the drama or gossip in the community. Who is having this social interaction with who, and what is the change in the social positions, or it is just about the strict or even dry following of the various rules and regulations. This was very prevalent at the time when Jesus Christ was preaching, that the authorities of the time were focused only on the ritualistic aspects and not on the actual devotional aspects of, at that time, Judaism. And it could be that one just accepts that kind of the predominating culture of the surrounding area or the surrounding society, and just does the religious things as because they like to feel religious, but does not actually accept the um, tenets or accept the prescriptions of that religion. So there are many ways that some sort of cheating propensity can come into the practice of devotional service. But the sadhu is supposed to actually manifest the qualities of one who has actually taken up the process of devotional service. One who is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to everyone. Not that, oh, you've insulted me, you've said something that I don't like, or you've insulted my social position, or put me in so much difficulty, and then I will be angry at you. No, sadhu, if one actually, if one insults them, is able to tolerate and just go on with their devotional service. We see examples of this, of people who had very serious reasons to be insulted or angry, just decide to tolerate. Of course, there are the examples given in the purport that we have already talked about. Another example that comes to mind from history is Maximilian Kolbe. I might be pronouncing his name wrong, but he is a Polish, I believe, priest who is now a saint, that lived during World War II. And after he was found helping to smuggle the targets of the Holocaust out of the country, he was sent to a concentration camp himself. And according to the records, after somebody escaped from the concentration camp, they would choose 10 random people to starve to death. And once they got to the 10th person, that person, uh, was upset, because he had a family and uh, people on the outside, basically, that he wanted to live for. So Maximilian Kolbe just said, "Take me instead." Uh, and while he was there, he usually in the place where they performed this slow execution, they there's usually screaming and lamentation and everything like that. But the entire time they were there for however many days, they just heard all the other prisoners and the guards just heard hymns coming from it. So you see, even in history, coming from down from the uh, scripture, which might seem very far removed, uh, there are still examples of people who have this humble state of mind. And of course, the example that's kind of closest to us as members of the Hare Krishna movement is that of Srila Prabhupada, who preached pure devotional service in uh, extremely unfavorable circumstances. One can read the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita to hear about when Prabhupada first came to the West, the conditions of life that he was living in, just on the Bowery, uh, and even in the early preaching centers, were so austere, and so, in one sense, unsuitable for such a elevated personality. And even throughout the movement, throughout the history of the movement as it grew, there are so many issues that came up. One can read or hear about all the difficulties, whether that was, uh, people trying to cheat the devotees, as happened in India sometimes with buying land. Sometimes devotees preaching just some things that were not in the books at all. Or sometimes, devotees, even leaders, just running off and either taking money or uh, doing some other activities uh, that Prabhupada just tolerated. And even sometimes when these devotees who had uh, gone away in some way or another uh, came back, he just accepted them. Uh, and all of these examples show that when one has actually taken up the process of devotional service, one develops all good qualities. Um, and that is what really attracts sincere people to this process. People, I think especially now, are kind of getting fed up with kind of just the, mm, one could say, social club version of religion, uh, where it's just something that we all do. Parents drag their kids to it. And, they might hear from, the Bible or the Torah or the Quran or whatever, but don't actually see people living it. Or they see people uh, living it in a very, or I should say, ostensibly or purportedly living it in a very unpalatable way. By just going out and telling people how much God hates them and is going to send them to hell or something. These alternatives are not very palatable to people. And so many people are just leaving the entire process of religion because they see that what is being preached is not being practiced. So we should attempt to uh, not just distribute the books, but also read the books, and not just read the books, but actually follow the books. And in doing so, actually try to ourselves develop a saintly personality of the symptoms of sadhu. And that way try to follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni and preach, whether in one place, if that sort of lifestyle is where the most suitable to you, or all over the world, if that is more suitable, or even all over the universe, one is able to do that. So I'll end here. I have about 12 minutes left. If there are any comments or questions, additions, subtractions?
Very nice class. Thank you for your examples and touching on so many other parts of the purport. I've always been curious when it says that one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Um, in such a state of mind, why is that state of mind allowing you to chant the name of the Lord constantly? Is it, in this example, it kind of sounds like because you're not being deterred from devotional service by the negative experiences you're having, you're not going to leave, you're going to keep chanting. But I don't know, have you ever thought about that or have any thoughts?
So the question is that, in the verse quoted from the Sri Shastram, that says, in this state of mind, we chant the Lord constantly. And kind of, why does this state of mind enable one to constantly chant the holy name of Krishna? Truth, I haven't thought too much about it previously. I would say that um, actually true humility uh, allows one to always think of Krishna because at either extreme, whether there is prestige or false prestige, as is usually translated, or kind of just abject dejection. One is thinking of oneself. Uh, either how great I am, or how crappy I am. And either one of those doesn't enable one to think of Krishna. So if you're thinking of yourself and just all about your own qualities and pastimes, then you aren't thinking of Krishna's qualities and pastimes. But if one is actually humble, that one knows one's actual position, because that is, I think, how some writers, not necessarily even Vaishnav per se writers, but like the Christian writers on virtue have defined humility as knowing one's actual position, which of course we know is as a servant of Krishna. And if one is always thinking of oneself like that, then automatically one is always thinking of Krishna, which is what it means to chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So that would be my thoughts on why this mentality enables one to Kirtanya Siddhaharini. Yeah.
Humble state of mind to listen to.
Mhm.
I know it talks about other qualities, but you
Yeah.
touch on
Yeah. Yeah. Any other Tarka Prabhu?
Hare Krishna.
Hare
With
Krishna.
with regards to Kirtaniya Sadaharihi, my understanding is that by adopting this mentality of extreme humbleness, it precludes any possibility of committing offense. You become offenseless. And when you become offenseless, only then will you have the energy to be able to always hear and chant the holy names, because offenses will sap your vitality. If you commit offenses, your hearing and chanting will be interrupted. You may actually be denied the privilege of the holy names by offenses. But if you become offenseless, you will always have access to the holy names. That's my briefest summary. But that's my understanding, that when one becomes very humble in this way, no possibility of offenses. Offenses are the obstacle to our progress in Krishna consciousness. The only reason that we are not advancing rapidly, or that we are not advanced to the topmost stages of Krishna consciousness, it's simply due to offenses. I may chant Krishna's names for hours on end. Why am I not seeing Krishna face to face? He's none different from his holy names. I'm hearing his names, I'm chanting his names, but I'm not perceiving that Krishna is personally present. It is due to offenses. Every obstacle, every problem in realizing, fully realizing Krishna, it's always due to offenses. So you become more tolerant than a tree, more humble than the grass, and so on. There's no possibility of offense. You can't commit offenses. So that mentality, it's very important to cultivate that mentality, starting immediately. Sometimes devotees argue that, well, but that's not practical, or it's or that's only for the most advanced devotees. Haridas Thakur could manifest such an extraordinary state of mind, but it's out of reach for ordinary individuals like ourselves, and that is a defeatist mentality. One should not think like that. You can begin to cultivate that frame of mind immediately. You may not always be successful, but you have you have to start somewhere. Uh, it's something that you have to do. Everyone has to do this sooner or later. Um, why not start immediately? Begin practicing it immediately, and it's a broad subject matter. There's a lot to understand. It doesn't mean that we should voluntarily subject ourselves to abuses, for example. Um, we also have an obligation to protect Krishna's property, and this body is Krishna's property. Um, we surrender this body to our spiritual master at the time of initiation. We have an obligation to protect it, to care for it properly. Doesn't mean that we neglect these things, um, but we should be very, very humble and tolerant. Um, without cultivating that mentality, we are sure to commit offenses to one extent or another at some point or other in time. And that will obstruct our progress, and it will interfere with our ability to hear and chant the holy names. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your comments, Prabhu. We have 2 minutes left. Are there any last minute comments or questions? And if not, then Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Thank you.